be. We are now live. You start the stream, Dr. Jones. Why is this kicking it?
It's not even a good.
It's not supposed to be. I'm old
It's
now.
not even
I
a
live on
good short
royalties.
round. You got to get a higher. Your
I
voice
was on
is still
Epstein
low.
Island.
Dr. Jones, you take the cut. I mean, if you're gonna be racist and really bad about it, you got to have the high voice as well, man.
And you got to be delivering Chinese or pizza.
Oh, he not crazy. He insane.
You think it now. You know what you are? You look like Susie.
Oh, big American party. Yeah. Hey, Kirsty, how you doing?
Good evening. You are listening live to Kickin' It, the action movie review show. Soon already devolving into foolishness. And yes, we are doing Marked for Death, Not Above the Law. So my penance is now served. I had to do a dumb impression that they called me out on, and that was the kid from Dr. Jones that will be found on the list of names of Epstein Island as he goes on quote-unquote suicide watch, which is going to make a great action movie at some point. So maybe Stallone could do an escape plan with Epstein and all that, because that's going to be the real cinema secret that needs to get exposed. That being said, no pedophiles in this movie, only Jamaican warlords. And I say warlords because that's plural, because damn it, he finally has a twist in his movie. Twins.
Yep.
Yes. So good evening. He is
Spoiler
joining us.
Wow,
How are you this evening, sir?
You just dropped right on into the ending there. It's just let's spoil
It's not a surprise.
Oh
Let's do
gosh.
it, buddy.
All right.
Okay. Are you doing good tonight, sir?
Peachy Keen.
That's
Absolutely.
well. How are things over on I Love Comics? That just absolutely insanely fast-growing channel.
Yeah, right. In the wrong direction these days. It's doing great. You know what? I got to say thank you to our other co-host who's going to be joining. I think we're going to call it somewhere along the lines of Trailer Park or something like that. But Dalton stepped up last night. It's his birthday today, by the way, and happy birthday to Dalton. And we were doing a live stream last night where he said, I always wanted to support Englentine on I Love Comics. So for my birthday, could someone go commission a video about the Sandman? And what ended up happening is someone commissioned the Sandman, the entire series, dropped $20 on that one. And then 4 people dropped $5 each on different mystical characters. So step up for Dalton. Thank you very much for helping out the channel at a huge time of need when YouTube's decided to screw me over. I got to give him all the credit. Thank you.
Nice.
Appreciated that.
Yeah, and the thing with Dalton, he's always been a big supporter of the show. I know he listens. I know he likes to give feedback. You guys obviously know Dalton better than I do, as well as the listeners. But he's always welcome, of course, and we enjoy his stuff there too on his channel. The Authenticator. I don't know what he's authenticating, and maybe that's the inside joke that I'll learn, which I'm sure I'll let him explain to me. But happy birthday, sir! When you're listening to this, now you're legal.
And when he's done with his birthday, we're going to be checking out this new Zombieland trailer. We've been asked to tear apart the trailer for Cats and whatever goodies are out there we could do. So,
yeah, and on that note, too, as we segue over into Dr. Venkmantine, he's also guesting with us again tonight, as usual, on the Kickin' It show here. We're wanting to do Predator. We're wanting to do some other ones. I know Galaxy of Terror was mentioned by Tim. I think Leighton is the name, the one that wanted us to do Life Force, and we had covered that. So yeah, we're trying to work our way towards a schedule where you guys know specifically what's going on, not just Sunday nights with the Xtreme movie show or maybe the Tuesday night Kickin' It. We're trying to figure out a way to best integrate all that. We've been working behind the scenes with a Discord server and some other things too. So we're going to experiment with a few more things, and we just keep continuing to grow. And I really, really like that. I'd like to give a special shout out, of course, to Dr. Venkman co-hosting on the Kickin' It. So I've had the Chuck Norris, because we now have a few pop 100, and some of them are getting up to 110, 115. So that's awesome. How are you tonight, sir?
I am a little overtired, but man.
Okay, stop whining, millennial.
I'm not whining. No.
The man stayed up all night last night on a live stream on I Love Comics. He's not joking about this.
No.
Did you ever hit the hay afterwards?
For an hour.
Okay. Yeah, we had a late night party. We dropped a 4-hour live stream last night.
Yeah, and then me and Ian had an after party.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I would never tell you to fake enthusiasm, gentlemen. So let's just talk about how enthusiastic.
How dare you? I never fake on this channel. Never once.
Well, on that note, let's talk about not quite his magnum opus, but what I consider a very, very fine film in Marked for Death. So let's back up a little bit. We talked about Chuck Norris first couple films because it started off the 80s. We tied that into the Top 10 Tuesdays we've been doing. And we saw Chuck Norris grow, and it got 80s-fied in 85, let's say. It got bombastic, lots of guns and everything else there too. Seagal started off in a great film that I know, Doctor, you weren't necessarily the biggest fan of, but I think you, if I recall correctly, admitted that in the second film that he did there, Above the Law, things were more efficient and got better. So what were your initial impressions about this third film?
Well, it's interesting you bring it up. The first movie, I didn't really hate it, as I thought it was too long. If they would have cut it down, brought in more action, it would be great. It would be right on par with Hard to Kill. Hard to Kill was just pure action, This one, they kind of faltered a little bit on me. It's not bad. It's not good. It just how it bounces back and forth from action to the slow periods and all, and then back to action. It's like a ping pong. Sounds
like romancing a woman, though. The starting and stopping and getting all hot and bothered until the very end, and then whammy, it hits you.
Right? Yeah. As long as the ending's good, it's all I care about. And it had a good ending.
Nice. So it sounds like you kind of liked it in general.
I liked it. As I said, I think it's also because I'm a little overtired. So no, I didn't fall asleep once. So that means it's a great movie.
And you just got done watching it about
I like
seconds ago. What are your thoughts?
10 minutes. My thoughts on it. This is the one I was saying. It's one of my favorite of his films, and I remember this one, Out for Justice, and the Under Siege movies are really the big Seagal films for me. And I put this on and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I remember it being cool. And then it hit me. All the cool Jamaican scenes I was thinking about aren't in this movie. They're in The Predator 2. they came out so close together. And I'm like, wait a second, what happened to that one scene where the guy, oh shoot, wrong movie. So I'm watching this and it's coming back. I remember all of this stuff. This is such a fun film. It is a piece of crap. It is a bad movie, but it was like something I said in our last stream. You can't talk bad about it. It's a bad movie, but everything you could complain about is exactly why it could be loved. This movie has horrible acting. It's got the worst fight choreography you could find in any of the Seagal films. And the acting.
What about the acting, sir?
It's amazing. It's almost like Juilliard levels of bad. You have to be classically trained to be this bad at acting. I mean, it's just amazing to me. My favorite, of course, is the oh shoot, I even forgot his name already. John or whatever it is, Steven Seagal, when the woman's like, John, they hurt my baby. And you turn around, and also the makeup effects are wonderful in this because you turn around, there's no rip in her shirt, but there's like red paint all over it. And I'm like,
they definitely went with the syrup. It's definitely noticeable.
Like they blew all of their budget on the end kill where they had the split going down the skull. Like, really, you couldn't just like rip the shirt a little bit to maybe look like she got shot or something? It's a fun film. It really is.
You know what was great though? When Seagal's getting tossed into the bar scene, all these guys' face busted into all the glass jars. Not one single cut on him.
No, not even. Well, the one Jamaican guy gets thrown through the jewelry cases at the mall.
Yep.
And he even crawls over using his hands. Nothing, no lacerations, nothing at all.
Okay, But see, we can talk about hyper-realism all we want. We can talk about levels of acting. So to me, one of the themes we've talked about too is was it appropriate for the time for what it's trying to convey? If you want to get all like artistical and stuff, so yeah, there are no sirs in front of any actors' names in this movie, but we don't want that. I don't want to see Anthony Hopkins taking on twin Jamaican drug lords with
Fuck,
katanas.
I do. Are you kidding me? I want Anthony Hopkins now doing that. Are you? That would be a badass movie.
I mean,
If he wanted to, he would have done it, and he didn't do it. So the appropriate man for the job was Darren Seagal.
I don't think that would work unless it was old ass Anthony Hopkins.
I mean, at least wanted something like where some guy's got like a piece of glass sticking out of his face or on his hand.
Yeah,
there wasn't even that.
Well, let's just talk about the film in general, just as far as like the template, because by now Seagal's had 2 films behind him, and so to your point, Doctor, like we saw with Chuck Norris, you had basically a setup with something. Yeah, it probably wasn't all realistic when it comes to some of the injuries and stunts. Now that you're here for this particular one because you wanted to be on it, I know we'll probably mention a couple practical effects, but basically, I thought it was a decent film. And the thing I liked about it too is that by now you knew what the Seagal template was. He was going to come in, he was going to have some weird ass Italian name. Typically, he was going to have that little scowl on his face. He's going to run and look like a girl. He's going to have his ponytail flannel about. He's going to have his leather jacket on. There's no members only because that was a thing too in some 80s films. But in Seagal, think about the last film. Doctor, you brought up the Lorenzo Lamas buddy guy from the show whose name I cannot recall at the moment. Renegade, the
Yes.
Renegade guy. So he was in the first 2 films, and in the second film, you pointed out specifically a scene where they're out on the alleyway, and he's got the butcher knife or the big knife and all that, where he's going to get whacked. But you also mentioned a scene in there about him getting thrown through glass. So what does Seagal do in this one? He takes the lessons learned, because I'm sure he had a breakout session afterward, like in the business, the lessons learned. And he said, what could I do with this, with a Jamaican in a store, in a mall? Well, I can look at the Chuck Norris film and see where he blows up a mall. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to. I'm going to do it because I want to talk about hand-to-hand combat and not guns. So I'm going to take this guy's head and I'm going to throw it through the glass thing. And then I'm going to do it again so everyone knows I did it one more time than the last film. And then he just does it all the way through. And when I saw this in the film in theater with everybody around, that was like standing ovation material. So Seagal, yeah, you got to have your lows, Doctor. So when you have your highs, they're there. Am I not right?
You had, which was cool. He was repeating things. Like in the last movie, he used the machete, cut someone's hand off. This one too, he cut the guy's hand off.
Yeah, you're always going to get that. You're always going to get a couple breaks.
Yeah, the 2 arm breaks you got in this one, so you got twice as much as the other ones.
Yeah, so I mean that's what the 80s did. They hit
Chuck Norris had his kicks.
Button.
Yeah, and he had his arm breaks.
Wow.
A couple of them in this one too.
But there was no toothpick yet, though.
Well,
he had to have his Kojak moment sometime.
Well, actually, he does when he's having the speech, and the one guy's asking about what's going on, and everyone just went ape shit, like foaming at the mouth. And he goes, "One thought he could fly, the other thought he was above the law." And I'm saying that wrong. They were both wrong. Whatever. It's the same kind of quote as the last movie, right?
Yeah.
So he gives you
what happened up
all
there.
the same stuff.
He says, "What happened up there?" One thought he was invincible. The other thought he could fly.
Whisper. Start over and whisper.
Okay. What happened up there? Well, one thought he was invincible. The other thought he could fly. And
they were both wrong.
They were both wrong.
But when you watch this instead of listen to it, the very key important thing, and this is where I think, and I'm being dead serious here, straight face, because I don't like to lie. He turns and he has that scowling look on his face, and he gives that delivery where it's believable. I mean, and you're right, it's gratuitous, and that's what sums up the 80s. When I say 80, things were 85. And what he does in this movie, yeah, it's even getting more gratuitous for him, and thankfully that pattern will continue. But to me, him just doing it, I'm like, not a lot of people could sit there and do it. And it's the same thing as Chuck Norris not saying anything, and at the end going, "Time to die." I mean, it's like, not a lot of people can deliver that message, that manner, and that's what makes the movie. Thank you, Steven Seagal, for making this film.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I recognize it. Like I said, I recognize it as an entertaining film. And to me, there is a difference, or there can be a difference between an entertaining film and a good film.
Agreed. They're not the same thing, but they can be. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, for this movie though, was there anything that stood out that surprised you that you liked that maybe you thought you hadn't seen, or and re-seeing it, you went, "Oh, I don't remember that, but I kind of like that." Well, what about that?
Well, it was something I got to give it to the guy who plays Screwface, especially when I looked up, because I was looking up a couple of the cast members, and the guy who plays Screwface, his name's Basil Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
This is his first role.
Really?
Yeah, this was his first movie. So when I found that out, I was impressed. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, because he plays a little bit over the top, but he's pretty menacing. And I thought he did very well as a bad guy. Now I was looking at the other people, like, and we'll talk a little bit about it later. But when I noticed this one, I was like, okay, let's see what else he's been in. He looks so familiar. This can't be the only thing. Well, in all honesty, this is the only big thing he's done.
Right.
And he's had some TV shows here and there, but if you want to talk about meaty roles and everything, because he was in Blood Diamond, Joyride, in bit parts in a TV show here or there, but he disappeared for a long time as well, for like 3 or 4 years. So I scrolled down. Okay, so where is Marked for Death? Yeah, first movie right out the gate. He gets the big baddie, and I think he knocked it out of the park. The other, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I agree with you totally, and I didn't know that. So, I mean, sometimes I look for stuff for that because something might interest me while I'm watching a movie, and I think, oh, I want to go check and look that up, because now we can Google everything, look everything up, and that's pretty awesome. Back then, we didn't know that. We just assumed he was an actor. He had some acting chops, probably was on some TV shows, then did movies or whatever. But to your point, I mean, that even makes this movie even better.
Yeah,
I mean, you had other notable actors in here too, and old musicians. Actually, you had Jimmy Cliff was in here.
Mm-hmm.
He does one of the main songs for this, and then you had Keith David.
Yeah.
Oh, talk about Keith David. I forgot about him, but you're right. Oh my God, he makes everything better.
Every scene he's in is you're right, just that much better.
I mean, not just the same. You mentioned before we went live. Danielle Harris. It plays the little girl.
Danielle, I was going to talk about her next. We talked about Danielle Harris at length last year on I Love Comics before we moved over to our own channel, and she is the little girl in the Halloween movies and the sequels 4, 5, and I believe bit part in 6.
I believe so.
Yeah. So it was pretty. It was pretty cool that you see her again. Of course, she became a bit of a scream queen after that. So, but yeah,
she's in the Hatchet movies.
Which are definitely worth it. But yeah, I was looking at her going, okay, she is familiar. Where did I see this girl before? Where did I see this?
Well, and Don't Tell the Mom the Babysitter's Dead. That was the other one she was in. The one good movie that wasn't like horror.
Okay.
I mean, apart from this.
Yeah. Okay. No, it was it's kind of nice to see the cast going along, but I've seen them do better. That was that's the funny thing about it. But yeah, overall, it's a fun film though. You can't get past any of that.
Yeah, I mean,
one thing that I started noticing is one of these things I mentioned yesterday, even or in our last one, we have a friend named Tim, and when I saw what was it, Under Siege 2 with him, because we worked at the same movie theater at the time, he pointed something out, and I cannot unsee it anymore. I'm actually counting the times. Steven Seagal doesn't get hit for like most of this movie. He doesn't get hit until he fights the very last bad guy.
But he's not supposed to, because that, in all seriousness, I'm going to say this without knowing the answer. I'm just going to throw it out there for you guys to chew on, but one of the key things I mentioned about the 80s and movies, especially the early ons before they got super pop, was that you had definite specific taste that would cater to a lot of audiences. And to me, with martial arts, it was the exact same thing. So to me, Steven Seagal is showing you his, Aikido. And a big part of that is I'm just going to move and redirect, not get hit. I'm not going to do a lot of striking, like point contact karate, like Chuck Norris was a master of. And Norris knows a lot more than that, of course. But Seagal, would demonstrate that for you. And so even to Doctor's previous observation about how, yeah, you would see that he would use a knife in a scene. He would do a disarming technique where you'd see the camera, showing up on the guy's hand and all that. I don't think he was supposed to get hit.
Well, that's supposedly what his martial art is. Yeah, it's a keto is what he does. But the one thing is it kind of kills tension if you don't have your hero in some sort of trouble.
You wonder, was that in his contract? He didn't want anybody to ruin his face?
I don't know, maybe.
But it would be a stunt man anyway. So
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure when he was thrown into the bar, it was a stunt dude.
yeah. The one last thing that I wanted to mention, before we get to our final thoughts here is, by and large, it's a decent movie. It's entertaining. It's worth a watch sometimes. You want some silliness. Sometimes, to me, I look at it and go, man, I'm in a Steven Seagal mood, and then I'll throw on one of these films, and it still entertains me to this day. But the whole premise of the movie, Jamaicans, what I liked about the film is early on there's a scene where you see like the news covering all these Jamaican stuff, and so it's the security pants, white person on the news going, Jamaicans and a Jamaican posse, Jamaican posse, and that's all you'd hear about it. But here's the thing. That was a legit thing that actually happened, and not just in Chicago or LA and New York. There were, especially here in Central Florida, we talk about the gangs of Pine Hills. You had your turf wars, and you had to know where the lines were, so you wouldn't cross over here and you'd be in the Jamaican one, or the Haitian one, or the Mexican one, or the Puerto Rican one, or the downtown, the VME district where you had a cross of the Russians and some of this, and so even in a mid-sized town like Central Florida here, where we grew up, joking about all that, they were there, they existed, and we had stuff like that going on. And to see this being put on TV was something I thought was sort of smart on their part. They said, okay, let's do the same Steven Seagal template, but what's going to be the thing to it? Let's throw in Jamaicans because it's a thing. Okay, great. Now I'll throw in my arm breaks, I'll throw in my neck crack, I'll throw in my line, I'll throw in my this and that, boom, movie done. You knew what you were getting. So to me, but like I said, by now you have the Steven Seagal template, and I still think it works.
Okay.
Final thoughts, E.
Final thoughts about Marked for Death. It's definitely worth the watch, especially if you're like following along on Kickin' It and you're like, well, I got to give this a try. It is a bad film, but it's an entertaining bad film. It's not like watching Biodome, which is just a bad movie. This has got a lot of elements you're going to enjoy. It's Steven Seagal at his cheesiest. To have come in and see one of his family members tied down to a table, and he knows that there's danger about because his family member's tied to a table, and the first thing he does is put the gun down and walk 6 feet over to the girl instead of carrying the gun where it would be where he needs it. There's just a lot of great cheese in this movie, and sometimes you just need a good piece of American cheese.
So before we go over to Doctor's final thoughts, the last question I would ask, with your final thoughts, E, does it pass the Meg test?
Would I rather see this than no, the Meg test is it's got great actors. It's got somebody you want to see. It's got all the hype. And does it live up to that hype?
It does not deliver. That's right.
No, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why this passes the Meg test, because I do want to put an asterisk. You know what you're going. It passes, but barely, because you know what you're going to get when you go into a Steven Seagal movie, and this delivers everything you want from a Steven Seagal movie.
Yeah. Whereas the Meg delivered absolutely 100% nothing.
You know you were going to get you thought you were going to get Jason Statham over the top. You thought you were going to get some great gigantic shark action. You thought you were going to get some bloody good, like we said, over the top. Just it's supposed to be a gore fest. Perhaps Blink from the X-Men would have gotten naked. She didn't. It just delivered on none of the promises.
I agree with you totally.
Yeah.
And with that, Doctor, your final thoughts.
Before I get to my final thoughts, I just want to mention about the budget for this movie. It was only $12 million, and worldwide it made $58 million. Domestically, it was like 46 million?
Mm-hmm.
So as his third movie, it opened up as number one for 3 weeks.
Oh yeah, he was getting hot.
Yeah, so, he was the thing now because Chuck Norris went to guns. So who was your martial artist? It was him and a young JCVD, which we'll be talking about soon.
I'm just curious, what movies was it going up against? This is 1990. At this time when it released.
Oh well, you can check that out easy.
Yeah.
With,
I'll have to look it up just for follow up. But yeah, my final thoughts is like, it's still worth a watch, man. Yeah, there's some funny stuff, but and there's serious parts. I mean, like you said, it's his Seagal movie. You know what you're getting into now. Either you're gonna hate it, or you're gonna love it. You know, it's not a boring movie. I mean, you know what you're coming into this. If you don't like Seagal, don't watch this movie. I'm just saying. I mean, you love him or you hate him. This was a good movie. This is everything you want, and this is a Seagal movie.
Does it pass the Meg test for you?
It has been. I mean, it has Keith David in it, and I mean, I wish they would have had a little bit more known actors in here. But I mean, this is the 1990s. You know, you're kind of getting into where it's not as hot as far as movies were in the 80s, as far as celebrity power. And this is also Seagal too. So I mean, I would say just barely. I mean, Keith David's a good actor.
Do I hear yes?
I'm here. You're hearing a yes.
Okay.
it sounds like he's putting an asterisk as well, though.
Well, look, and here's the thing. He has an identity. You know what it is. One of the reasons why we covered him was because I believe, honestly, that he was significant in the 80s for what he brought to the film, for these couple of films. Certainly not stuff after Under Siege and all that. We're not even going to bother with that. He certainly was hot, but because of the past 15, 20 years and all the foolishness about him and the bad human capital he has around him and stuff, he's not thought of in a good light. Whereas even JC80's had a bit of a mini renaissance over the past few years. But we like martial arts. We like action films. This is certainly, I would think, culturally significant in the 80s to talk about for these here too. And, you know, if it passes the Meg test, it can't be all that bad, right?
Well,
I mean, it was silver in the Meg though. You kind of, and the retrospect, where she says like he has two eyes and or four eyes and two heads.
yeah.
So I'm like, it's gonna be like the Meg. Yep, it's twin.
Twin. It's like, oh, what could the twist there be? Twin.
I still say Steven Seagal would look great if he actually had the white goatee and when the really, really long, like 2-inch fingernails and all that too. And he ended up just doing like a master role where he could speak and train somebody.
You mean like Gordon Liu in Kill Bill?
Exactly.
Okay.
I totally see Seagal doing that. I think he's got one more good movie in him like that, mainstream one there too. And he did make fun of himself there, and what was it, Machete and all that too. I thought, oh, he might be able to turn around here, and it just didn't really happen. So
he can be Raiden from the new Mortal Kombat movie, because Christopher Lambert did it. So why can't Seagal?
Now,
right.
Eric Breen is asking a question. I'm going to flat out say yes. If we don't, I think we should focus Sunday night on a Rutger Hauer night. I
agree. I had mentioned in there that we had talked about it. We just hadn't decided, which specific films to highlight and all about it. But I definitely love the idea.
Seeing it's out.
I think it's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's our big show. So we could.
It's a really big show.
It's a really big show. So we could focus Rutger Hauer. You know, what's the best? Our favorite Rutger Hauer films, and Blade Runner. I know Blade Runner is that is a great Rutger Hauer movie. No matter if I like it as much as everybody else or not, I got to agree that Rutger Hauer fucking kills in it.
I looked at the box office for the weekend. It was going against the reissue of Fantasia, Ghost, Goodfellas, Flatliners.
Those are some
heavy
movies. Hitters. Yeah, Ghost
massive
and Goodfellas.
Heavyweight hitters.
I know.
Goodfellas, are you kidding me?
And the remake, I remember that's the movie poster I have behind me. The remake, that reboot of Fantasia, it did gangbuster business.
They had Death Warrant on here as well.
Which we will be talking about.
But yeah, it was number one. Ghost was at 4.
I was more of a Von Damme than a Seagal fan.
Yeah, I like all three.
Yeah, I think I was just impressed by the counter splits.
Yeah, Death Warrant dropped to 12.
Hobo with a Shotgun is awesome, Eric Breen. Me and Rob are not going to let a Rutger Hauer night go by without talking about Blind Fury.
He was
Well,
great.
just
in
It
to,
it.
just to piggyback on Christy's comment there, I know Eric obviously knows some of the films he's done, or a lot of them. He's a big fan of them. Sounds like I had mentioned before, Sci-Fi Channel had did a bunch of anthologies over the past couple of years. I think 2 a year, based off of creepypastas. He was in the third of the 4, which honestly I think is the weakest, but I think he's the strongest part of them. And it's only like 6 episodes, an hour long each. I think they're fantastic. They're my idea of good horror. So I'd recommend all of them if you just look up like Sci-Fi, Candle Cove, the house. There's one about a house. There's several things on, but when they landed Rutger Hauer, I went, damn it, the show's just getting better, because the Rutger Hauer in it. Because before it's just bit guys, and it's super micro budget film to Canada. That's something I always want to talk about with the horror films at one night. But yeah, he's got a lot, and he's a creepy bastard too. He brings it. So it'll be fun to talk about him on Sunday night. So any last comments, gentlemen, before we call it a night?
Nah, just that Marked for Death is definitely worth a shot. At least a one view.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. One view there too.
It has great music too.
Yeah, and honestly, we might even start talking about the Seagal's, the fact that he's a musician on the side. But I don't want to bore you with all the things he's accomplished. However, are we not going to do an emergency stream in about 5 minutes after this one to debate for a few minutes with the help of our audience members of what the best movie food is to eat?
Sure, we could do that. I'm
All right.
I'm here for it a little bit.
So let's look for that then. Christy, Eric, everybody else listening, we're going to go live in about 5, 7, 4. Look for the tweet. There was a massive tweet going on. I guess apparently there was a Candygate thing going on that I kind of skipped over. But when somebody replied with Trump saying wrong, 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 and there was so much vitriol going back and forth about vinegar and salt potato chips, I knew we had to step in and talk about it because it applies to movies, gentlemen and ladies. So with that, I'll say goodnight. And as always, stay
Extreme.
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 Extreme. You stay extreme, Dr. Jones. I don't go with Jeffrey Epstein no more.
You stay extreme now. God, that is so bad. We're going to hell.
Hang on, lady. We go for a ride.
Turn it off before it gets worse and we get our station thrown out.
Oh, you bad lady with Dr. Jones.
Bye.